Scripture's pretty short this morning. From Joshua 1:9. The Lord asked Joshua, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." The Lord commanded Joshua, "Be strong and courageous." Easy to say. But when the burden of leadership is placed on your shoulders, when the fate of the nation depends on your decisions, there must be an element of fear present. Joshua was Moses' successor. You remember Moses. He's the one who led the Israelites out of Egypt. He's the one who led them across the Red Sea on dry land. He's the one who ministered to them for 40 years in the desert. All the tribes of Israel were under his leadership. And now Moses has died, and the moment of truth has arrived. By God's command, they were about to cross the Jordan River to take possession of the lands that God had promised Abraham centuries before. And conflict with the residents there was inevitable. Would God really be with Joshua and the Israelites? Or would they find themselves alone and outnumbered by the armies who blocked their path once they crossed the Jordan River? This was a crucial moment in history, and Joshua had to choose faith or fear. Believe that God was truly with him, or let fear govern his thoughts and actions. You all know about fear. It's a crippling disease, and the antidote is always faith. Faith makes the impossible possible. Let's go back to another Bible story. The giant Goliath has stood on the banks of the creek and challenged the armies of Israel for 40 days in a row. "Choose a champion from among you and send him down. I'll fight him. If I win, you Israelites will become our slaves. If your champion wins, we'll become your slaves." Nobody dared to challenge this 9-foot giant until little David came from his father's pasture to bring some food and grain to his brothers who were in the army. David listened to this challenge and said, "Who is this uncircumcised guy who defies the armies of God?" And so he, small as he was, young as he was, decided somebody had to quiet this guy down. Imagine, if you can, little David crossing the brook, picking up 6 small stones to put in his sling. And meanwhile, this giant is approaching him from the other side, roaring, "Today, boy, I will feed your flesh to the birds in the air and the animals of the desert. Today, you're going to die." Fear had to be in his heart. But he overcame fear because he believed that God was with him. We know the rest of the story, right? Every human being experiences fear, and there's nothing wrong with being afraid. Fear can restrain us from doing something foolish, something that might cause harm to ourselves or to others. Now, this next example I'm going to give is for people who use computers. Sorry, Joanne. Take a nap. If you're sitting at your computer with your email open and a message comes that says, "You've been selected to receive $1,000 free," fear should keep you from responding to that message. Close your eyes, Morgan. Santa Claus died a long time ago. Nobody's going to give you $1,000. What they want is for you to respond to that message so they can get your bank account number and your phone number and all the other vital information that would allow them to drain your bank account. The $1,000 bait is dangled in front of you to entice you to respond. Don't be that foolish. Fear of being caught is the only thing that deters many people from doing something dangerous or illegal. Did you happen to see on the news this week that the highway patrol pulled a woman over who was going 70 in a 35 zone? More than double the speed limit. But some people don't have that fear. They think they can get away with anything. The Apostle Paul reminds his readers, the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. That's from Romans 13:9. Try, if you will, for just a moment to imagine a society with no rules and no authority. That's not a place I want to live. I don't know about you. Would anybody be safe at any time? What causes us to be fearful people? Well, there's a lot of reasons I can think of. I think some of us are fearful of living too long. We might run out of resources before we run out of days. We might fear losing our independence, needing either to go to a rest home or to be a burden on our families. There are other fears. My prayer for you this morning is that you have someone in your life that you can trust so much that you can share your deepest fears with them and they with you. Because just getting them out in the open can be a first step for dealing with it. Some folks fear failure. They've set the achievement bar so high and their lives are running out and they're afraid that they'll never measure up to what they thought they should be. Some folks fear being a failure as a parent. And some kids fear failing to satisfy their mom and dad. They wonder if mom and dad will still love them if they don't quite measure up. And that's sad too. Here's a very real fear that many of us face, and that's losing love. You know, to love and be loved is the greatest gift in life. But every married couple, or unmarried couple for that matter, knows deep down in their heart that one day, one or the other is going to die. Some of you have already experienced this, and you know the pain and the loss of love. What can we do to prepare ourselves? What can we possibly do? Well, one thing we can do is talk about it and not hide from it and tell each other what we would like to happen if we were the one to die. Which reminds me of Jeff Foxworthy. He says, or rather his wife says to him, honey, if I die first, would you remarry? He says, oh, that's a tough one. I got to think about that one. No, I probably wouldn't. Oh, but honey, I want you to remarry. I want you to. Okay, I promise if you die first, I'll remarry. And she says, how soon? Jeff pauses a minute and says, well, is it considered bad taste to bring a date to the funeral parlor? It's a joke, but the subject is serious and it needs to be addressed. I know a man who remarried after his wife died. She had a long illness. He tended to her need. He was there for her the whole time. When she died, he found someone else. And his children will not speak to him. They don't know that their mother told him, don't live life alone. See if you can find someone to share your love Pretending the fear of losing a spouse doesn't exist just makes things that much more difficult when a loved one does die. We can deny our fears. We can hide our head from our fears, but that doesn't banish them from our thoughts. Some folks, none of you in here, of course, have deep secrets. Maybe events that happened years ago. Someone, not in here, of course, maybe having an affair. Whatever secrets we hide in our souls, there's a very real fear of those being exposed. Because what happens then? Embarrassment, humiliation, accountability. I said a moment ago, I hope you have someone to share your deepest fears with. And you do have that person. His name is Jesus. He knows every fear that you've ever experienced. He's the one who said, I will never leave you, and I'll be with you to the end of the age. Maybe someone is saying, well, yeah, but I can't see Jesus. That's okay. The important thing is he sees us. With all our warts and blemishes and shortcomings, Jesus sees us and loves us. He knows our fears. He knows the things we're hiding from the world. If we think we're hiding them from God, we only delude ourselves. Jesus does not invite us, come to me so we can be judged or disgraced. He wants to set us free from the life-draining baggage of fear. The first step is to acknowledge that we have fears, and then get them out in the light and analyze them. But then what? Well, that's where faith comes into the equation. The fundamental question each of us must answer is this, and it's a real serious question. How much do we trust God? Do we trust God when we exhale our last breath? You know, I've talked to numerous people over the years. I've asked them, do you fear death? Well, yes. And why do you fear death? Because I fear God's going to punish me for my shortcomings and my sins. And that's sad. To me, that's very sad. Do we trust God when we've said goodbye to the dearest on earth to us? These are situations that you and I need to consider before they actually happen. But considering them need not make us fearful. We are children of a God who is full of grace, like the video that Glenn showed us this morning, abounds in grace and mercy and forgiveness. We don't have to be afraid. God wants us to draw nearer to Him. Earlier I alluded to a relationship with Jesus. You have a friend that you can turn to. If you have a relationship with Jesus. And it would be wrong of me to assume that everybody here does. Jesus won't come barging into your life uninvited. Jesus will come into your life if you ask Him. Lord, I need you in my life. I need your wisdom and your love and your protection and your direction. I need you to come into my life. If you've never prayed a prayer like that, today is a good time. Because once Jesus comes into our lives, then we have that person that we can share our deepest fears with. Then we have that person that we can talk to. None of us should be without Jesus. You and I may not have the weight of leadership on our shoulders like Joshua did. We may not be responsible for the well-being of millions of people. We may not be considering moving into unknown territory, physically or otherwise, as Joshua was. But we will all have situations in our lives where we have to choose to be dominated by our fears or be strengthened by our faith. And those are the moments that determine